This is a South Side Milwaukee residential basement. Unremarkable. Old concrete walls, exposed pipes, a workbench along one wall, shelves with tools, containers, materials that, in any other house, would mean nothing. In this house, those tools had a purpose that had been decided weeks before April 1st, 2024, while Maxwell Anderson was upstairs, putting on his jacket, checking his phone, getting ready for a first date with a 19-year-old college student who was 3 weeks away from graduating. Sade Robinson was 19 years old. She worked at a pizza restaurant on Milwaukee's east side to pay her own way through college. She was weeks from finishing her degree. She had her whole life planned in the way that 19-year-olds plan things, with the certainty that the future is a place you get to walk into on your own terms. On April 1st, 2024, she went on a first date with a man she had matched with online. His name was Maxwell Anderson. He was 33 years old, a former Navy veteran, a bartender at several Milwaukee establishments. He was older. He seemed stable. He had a house. She never came home from that date. But before we get to what happened on the night of April 1st, there is something you need to understand about Maxwell Anderson that changes everything about how this story is told. Because what happened to Sade Robinson was not a crime of passion. It was not an argument that escalated. It was not an impulsive act committed in a moment of rage. Maxwell Anderson wrote it down. He wrote out a plan. Before the date, before she arrived, before she sat across from him at dinner and had no way of knowing what the man opposite her had already decided would happen to her. Investigators found documentation of that plan. The jury saw it. The plan described using a gun to force Sade Robinson to the basement. It described what would happen in the basement. It described how her body would be dismembered. It described how the parts would be distributed across the city to prevent identification. He planned every single detail before she ever walked into his house. That is the fact this entire story lives inside. Everything that follows the dinner, the date, the surveillance footage, the burning car, the body parts found across Milwaukee County, every single piece of it was premeditated. Sade Robinson did not die because something went wrong. She died because Maxwell Anderson had already decided she would, and a first date was simply the mechanism he chose to get her through his front door. Welcome to Last Witness. Subscribe right now and hit that bell. Every story on this channel is built around one thing. Something always sees what people miss. Tonight, it is a network of cameras, restaurant surveillance, license plate readers, building footage, a phone app that tracked a killer across an entire city while he tried to make a 19-year-old woman disappear, and a basement floor that a cockroach crossed before, during, and after, and never forgot. Let's go back to April 1st. Sade Robinson and Maxwell Anderson met at the Twisted Fisherman restaurant on Milwaukee's east side. Surveillance footage captured them there, a young woman in her going-out clothes, a man old enough to have been through a career and a Navy discharge and years of life she had not yet lived. By all external appearances, a first date. Two people at dinner. Nothing remarkable. They moved to a downtown bar afterward. More surveillance. More footage of two people doing what people do on first dates, talking, drinking, filling the space between strangers with the performances that make the beginning of things feel possible. Phone records placed both of them at Anderson's Southside Milwaukee home later that night. Sade Robinson was alive when she walked into that house. She had no reason to believe the man who had taken her to dinner and a bar and made a normal evening of it had a written plan for what came next. At some point that night, in that house, in that basement, Maxwell Anderson executed that plan. We do not have a camera inside that basement. We do not have a timestamp for the exact moment. What we have is what came after, and what came after is documented in one of the most comprehensive evidence trails in recent Wisconsin criminal history. April 2nd, morning. Maxwell Anderson drove Sade Robinson's car to Warnemont Park in Cudahy, a Milwaukee County park on the Lake Michigan shoreline, wooded, with areas that are quiet in the early morning hours. Surveillance cameras tracked the route. License plate readers logged the car's movement. At Warnemont Park, Sade Robinson's leg was found the same day. Think about what that means forensically. A limb separated from a body, left in a public park, discovered within hours. At the site of that discovery, insect activity had already begun. Cockroaches, flies, ground beetles, the insects that move through outdoor biological material with the same precision they move through indoor scenes, had begun establishing a clock. A forensic entomologist reading that scene could determine the window between deposition and discovery with accuracy that no camera and no witness could match. The insects do not need a timestamp. They keep their own. What they recorded at Warnemont Park that morning was the beginning of a forensic trail that would eventually confirm every piece of Sade Robinson's body that was recovered and document, with biological certainty, what Maxwell Anderson had done in that basement. After Warnemont Park, Anderson drove Sade Robinson's car to North Milwaukee. He had brought an ignitable petroleum distillate with him. He poured it. He lit it. Sade Robinson's car burned on a North Milwaukee street, and then Maxwell Anderson walked away from it. A surveillance camera caught him doing exactly that, walking away from the burning car, calmly, with the measured gait of someone who has completed a task, not running, not looking back, walking. The footage of that walk is one of the most chilling pieces of evidence in this entire case, not because of what it shows explicitly, but because of what the composure in it means. This was a man who had anticipated this moment, who had prepared for it, who felt, in that moment, that everything was going according to plan. He walked away from the burning car and went home. Sade Robinson did not show up for her work shift the following day. Her co-workers raised the alarm. Her family reported her missing. And the investigation that followed began tracing the digital infrastructure of her final hours. Her phone, her car's movements, the restaurant footage, the bar footage, the license plate readers backward, from the moment she disappeared toward the last place anyone had seen her alive. That last place was Maxwell Anderson's house. He was arrested on April 4th, 2024, 3 days after the date. 3 days during which investigators had been assembling a surveillance mosaic that placed him at every critical location: the restaurant, the bar, the park, the burning car, and placed Sade Robinson's phone at his address on the night she vanished. When detectives arrived with a warrant, the basement told them everything the surveillance footage had already suggested: the tools, the materials, the evidence of what had been done there. Forensic processing produced biological evidence confirming Sade Robinson had been in that basement. DNA matched the remains being found across Milwaukee County as investigators continued their search. Over the days and weeks that followed, body parts were recovered from multiple locations across Milwaukee and surrounding areas. Both legs, her right arm, her torso, her right breast. Each discovery confirmed by DNA. Each piece of the geographic distribution fitting the disposal plan Anderson had written down before the date ever happened. Her head was never found. Let that sit. Sade Robinson's family stood in a Milwaukee courtroom in August 2025 after the guilty verdict, after life without parole was handed down, and told Maxwell Anderson directly that they cannot fully bury their daughter, that they do not have peace because one piece of her is still unaccounted for, and the man who knows where it is has chosen silence. Maxwell Anderson sat through that sentencing without disclosing anything. He maintained his innocence throughout the trial. He looked at a jury that had seen his written plan, the surveillance footage of him walking away from a burning car, DNA evidence from his basement, and body parts recovered across an entire city, and he maintained he did not do this. The jury returned a guilty verdict on all counts in June 2025. Life without parole was handed down on August 1st, 2025. Now let's talk about the digital infrastructure that dismantled his plan, because the way technology turned against him is one of the most complete evidence stories in recent true crime history. Maxwell Anderson was not a careless man. He had planned this. He had written it down. He had prepared the basement. He understood that physical evidence had to be scattered and destroyed to prevent identification. What he did not fully account for was the density of Milwaukee's surveillance infrastructure in 2024. License plate readers do not require a human being watching. They run continuously, log automatically, and store data on rolling cycles that investigators can subpoena within hours. Every vehicle that passes a reader gets its plate logged with a timestamp and a GPS coordinate. Every single pass. Anderson drove Sade Robinson's car from his Southside home to Warnemont Park to North Milwaukee. Every one of those movements was logged. The route was not a mystery by the time investigators had the subpoena data. It was a time-stamped, GPS-coordinated map of exactly where Maxwell Anderson drove a dead woman's car on the morning after he killed her. The phone data built the same architecture from a different angle. cell tower records, app location data, and the specific phone forensics documented by CBS, 48 hours placed Anderson's device and Robinson's device at his address during the critical overnight hours. Her phone went silent at his address. His phone stayed active, corroborating the license plate data with independent precision. Two separate digital systems. Same story. Neither requiring a human witness. In 2024, a Milwaukee resident moving through the city is logged by somewhere between 5 and 20 separate digital systems at any given moment. The city accreted into a surveillance environment over 2 decades. Plate readers, intersection cameras, building exterior cameras, phone towers, app location services, doorbell cameras, retail footage. Together, they became a net that Maxwell Anderson drove straight through, leaving a record at every node. The walking footage Anderson moving calmly away from the burning car became the visual anchor of this case. Not because it shows a crime, because it shows a man in the immediate aftermath of everything he had done, moving through a public street with composure so complete, it reads as inhuman. Prosecutors did not need to narrate it. It narrated itself. The insect evidence at the outdoor recovery sites added a forensic clock to everything the cameras had already mapped. Warnemont Park has established insect population baselines. Forensic entomologists working within those baselines, blowfly, larval development, beetle activity, cockroach and ground insect presence on biological material established the approximate window between deposition and discovery. That clock was consistent with Anderson having deposited the remains on the morning of April 2nd. The insects confirmed what the license plate readers had already mapped. There is one more layer that has not received enough attention: the written plan and what it reveals about Maxwell Anderson beyond this single crime. A 33-year-old man does not write out a detailed operational plan to lure a woman to his basement, kill her, dismember her, and distribute parts across a city on a whim. The specificity of that plan is the behavioral fingerprint of someone for whom this kind of thinking had become organized and rehearsed before Sade Robinson ever matched with him online. Was she the first person he had considered doing this to? Were there prior dates that ended differently only because circumstances intervened? Those questions are not answered in the public trial record. Anderson's not guilty plea foreclosed any possibility of addressing them. His silence on the location of Sade Robinson's head ensures that some dimensions of this case will never fully close. He is in a Wisconsin state prison. Life without parole. He will die there. And somewhere in Milwaukee, in a location one man knows and has chosen not to disclose part of Sade Robinson, is still waiting to be found. Her family said at sentencing that they cannot have a complete funeral, that their grief has a physical dimension most mourning families do not carry the knowledge that their daughter is not whole somewhere. Maxwell Anderson created that incompleteness and has chosen silence. The law has done what the law can do. It cannot compel a man to speak. Sade Robinson was 19 years old. 3 weeks from graduating, she paid her own way through school. She went on a first date the way millions of young women go on first dates in public first, building trust before privacy, following every guideline, and died because a man had already written down what he was going to do. The cameras saw him leave. They saw him walk away from the fire. They built a prosecution case a jury needed less than a day to evaluate. The technology he thought he had outplanned was the technology that put him away for life. But Sade Robinson's head is still out there. And Maxwell Anderson has the only answer. That cockroach in the basement crossed the floor before she arrived, and after she was gone, it did not know what had been planned. It just moved through the dark, the way it always does, across the concrete, around the drain, behind the water heater. Some witnesses see everything and say nothing. Maxwell Anderson is choosing to be that kind of witness now. And Sade Robinson's family is paying the price for his silence every single day. Subscribe to Last Witness. Hit the bell. Share this story, because the cameras in your city are always watching. And the next time a man with a plan sits across from a young woman at dinner, someone needs to be paying attention. Stay watching.